This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and our personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and we have a shared vision for success in business and our personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their early years. They often say they wish they had, and given we believe in learning lessons from others, we intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. Today, we'll be discussing why so many people lust after not just their status, but flaunting their wealth, how those people appear to those who don't have those values or attributes, how we plan to remain humble regardless of our level of success, and much more. But first, we like to start each episode with a brief update of what we've done in the past week in our business and personal lives, so that when we watch these back in the future, we can kind of gauge what's going on in our lives. So what do you have for business this week?
Business this week, I spent a majority of my time focusing on getting content creators, shipping out products,
Notes.
answering questions, just trying to push that product out and get some different content going. My ad sets are working relatively well. I'm scaling up the ads that are working well and then scaling down or maybe turning off the ads that aren't working as well to see how they fluctuate and vary. So working through that right now. This week was overall profitable,
Awesome.
which was great. But overall, it's just been good. It's been busy. Working a lot at regular work, 6 days a week. I pushed 59 hours this week.
That's terrible.
Time card. So a lot of work over there as well as a lot of work at home. So just grinding stuff out. And that's pretty much my business update in broad strokes.
If it doesn't,
It was a lot of just UGC, like user generated content
right.
creation stuff and going through the course notes and cleaning up, my spreadsheets, my research documents, getting together content briefs, pushing those out. All right. So a lot of kind of the same theme stuff.
Has anyone sent you, have any creators sent you content yet?
No, but a couple of them have received the product.
Okay.
So I should be seeing some content out of that within the next week.
Cool.
Yeah. So
If work doesn't ease up in April, how much longer do you think they'll need 6-day weeks?
6 to 8 weeks in terms of what?
Like working 6 days a week.
Oh, 6 days a week. After April, I won't have to.
Okay. It'll ease up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So it'll ease up in a way. It'll at least be 5 days a week after April. It'll still be busy, but it'll be 5 days.
So standard work week. Okay.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
bad.
It'll probably be some overtime, but it's not going to be 60-hour weeks.
Got it. That's good at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Last
average.
week you weren't sure if it was gonna stick. And
Yeah.
it
The money is definitely helpful. It's an extra. If I work 60 hours a week,
Right.
it's about an extra $1,000 each paycheck.
Yeah.
So
Not
that's
bad at
definitely
all.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, $2,000 a month extra, which is
Yeah.
definitely nice.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sustain long term.
Right.
If you're working with 12-hour shifts plus an hour drive each way and doing the drop shipping stuff, for me, it's just very, very tiring.
Yeah. Well, my biggest thoughts are that it inhibits the dropshipping work. Because if you have to spend so many hours at work, you can't spend as many on the dropshipping.
Exactly.
The benefit is your guy's in Australia anyways, so
Yeah,
you got to be up late at night anyways. But
that is true.
I guess it would be easier if you could go into work a little bit later in the mornings.
Yeah, it'd be nice to work just regular hours. I'd have more time in every way, but
Right.
April. It is what it is.
April.
So
If you still have to even be there in April.
yeah, fair enough.
Right.
But that's my business in broad strokes. What about you?
Okay, so I don't remember where I left off last week. But generally speaking, I'm looking for a brokerage right now.
Mhm.
I've gotten my license. Now I'm just looking for a brokerage. The problem with that is I have already gotten my first couple leads. So Justin's looking for an apartment, and someone else is looking to buy a house. So the issue with that is technically I can't act as a real estate agent if I don't have a brokerage to actually do the brokering, right? Because they work with the lenders and stuff. I can't act as a single agent.
Yeah.
So Justin's looking for an apartment, and I thought, okay, getting people apartments isn't exactly efficient because not every apartment complex gives real estate agents money for providing tenants. Some of them do. Usually the commission is around 1 month of rent,
Okay.
but they don't always do it. And that's just because some apartments, the demand is high enough that they don't need real estate agents to push people in. And I can't exactly steer clients toward apartments that offer more or less commission because I have to be showing them options that are fit to them. So a lot of times real estate agents don't really try to do rentals because it's easier to try to sell property, right? Um, because the commission's higher. But my thought was, it's more challenging to sell property if you haven't sold anything yet.
Mm.
And I can probably rip out apartment complexes really quickly because people don't consider apartments as heavily as they consider houses. It doesn't take as long to get people moved in. And a Google review for a property purchase is just as powerful as a Google review for an apartment referral. So then I started thinking, okay, well, the top real estate agents that I know have a bunch of positive Google reviews. And it would look pretty compelling if in my advertisements I could say, I'm a 5-star rated Google review real estate agent, right?
Mm.
And I can start stacking up those reviews now if I help people find apartments. Okay, how do I find apartments for people? Because I know of like maybe 5 or 10 off the top of my head, but I don't know if they, do commission, and I don't know immediately what their 1 bed, 1 bath, and 2 bed, 2 bath rents are.
Yeah.
So I built an Excel sheet which details every apartment complex in Vieira, Melbourne, West Melbourne, Palm Bay, Beachside. There's 109 of them so far in my sheet. And I have the name of the complex, the address, what their price, their bottom dollar price for a 1 bed, 1 bath, and 2 bed, 2 bath is, just so I can like kind of eyeball it off the cuff when someone tells me
Yeah.
what they're looking for. Whether or not they do commission, what the commission is, and then additional details about the apartment. But my whole deal is with Justin is, hey man, I'm going to try to find you a place. And regardless of whether or not they do commission, I don't care. I just would like a review. And so I'm going to be able to start stacking Google reviews early, which should then help me get into property sales. Great strategy. Great plan.
Yeah.
It's going well. I have a lot of apartments to call, but I'm working my way through the list, and Grace is helping me with it too.
Good.
And technically building the list isn't acting as a real estate, like I'm not actually providing services to anybody. I'm just building the list.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
interesting because you're kind of in a similar spot to me
Uh-huh.
right now in some ways, because right now I have 50 creators, over 50 that have reached out to me.
Mhm.
I've selected some portion that are going to do free content, some portion that are doing paid content,
Mhm.
and it's kind of mix and match in between. And they all want to do different things. And so it's like we're both in a boat where it's like large spreadsheets of lots of different people to reach out about lots of different things,
Yeah.
to get lots of different things done.
Yeah.
Like it's just like complex, which is why, like, this week it was just like broad strokes for me because it's just like the same thing, rinse and repeat every day, just trying to keep up with it, and or for you, trying to get the list coordinated for the apartments and continue pushing through and getting these contacts and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. As I think that this current Excel sheet was unanticipated. But I think that the next big thing for me is going to be figuring out what CRM I want to use, the customer resource matrix or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically like, as I get leads, I input them all into this CRM, and then it sends them automated emails checking in on them. And if they indicate through an email back that they need help, that email goes to me, and then I respond.
Yeah.
And making sure that you keep in touch with people, whatever. It helps you keep in touch with large numbers of people.
Yeah.
A lot of brokerages will offer their CRM for you. The problem is, if you switch from that brokerage, they keep your shit. So you drop your leads when you switch brokerages. I don't want that. So I want to use my own independent CRM. So that way, if I want to move between brokerages, it's not an issue.
Mm.
But that's after I pick a brokerage. Before then, I have to figure out this other lead because I found someone at work who we were just catching up, and they were like, "What have you been up to?" And I was like, "I got my real estate license." And they were like, "I'm thinking about buying a house." And I was like, "Tell me about the house you want to buy."
Yeah.
So we started talking about it. And I learned a couple things in looking at the types of things they want. They want like a fixer upper, and they're going to rent out some of the rooms to um, cover the mortgage, right? So buy like, I don't know, a 3 bed house and then rent out 2 of the bedrooms to other people, and that'll help cover the mortgage payment. And that's cool because if I can find this person a house and then find them renters to go in the house, now my Google reviews go from 1 to 3, which is sick. I'm really focusing on these Google reviews for no apparent reason because I don't think anyone cares about them as much as I do.
I mean, I'm sure that there are people who look at them though,
Probably.
customers.
Well, my thinking is if I need a real estate agent and I don't know anyone, I'm probably just going to Google like Melbourne real estate agents.
Yeah.
And go to the Google reviews. So that's what I'm going to do. And then as I got into the Google reviews, I wrote one for Grace because she did help me find an apartment when I moved in with her. And so she wasn't acting as a real estate agent, but it does show like a character trait there, right? So I wrote her one, but in writing them, I realized that the more Google reviews you write, Google gives you basically like credit points. And the more credit points you have, the higher up in the searches your reviews are. So if you have 500 credit points and I have 5 credit points, when you and I write a review and someone goes to look up whatever, Palhana, your review comes up first. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because now it's called a local guide. You become a Google local guide after a certain number of reviews. So for Tyler's real estate profile, Kay's is the first one that comes up because she's a Google local guide because she's left enough reviews. And I was like, that's interesting. I wonder if there's an even deeper layer of strategy here because people want a real estate agent who knows the area, right? I have the added benefit of being from here, so I know the area pretty well. If I go leave reviews on a bunch of places that I know and love locally, and someone in the area is frequently looking at Google reviews and they're consistently seeing my name, and then they see my name on a real estate advertisement, there's a little bit of name recognition there, and they recognize that I know the area. And then my Google reviews are positive, which even further cements it, right? So anyways, that's like a recent little like addiction that I found. But in looking for this house, they're looking for something in like the $250,000 range.
Yeah.
Which is going to come with like, it needs fixing up, right? And this person is handy, so it's not an issue. We looked at a couple different places and I learned a lot about how to find the gremlins in a house without actually having to go there, because you can find a lot from the multiple listing service, the MLS, that isn't shown on like Zillow and Redfin and these other places. So for this one, I found they were offering, it was a foreclosed house, which means that someone owned the house, didn't make their mortgage payments, the bank took it back, and now the bank is just trying to sell it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times when that happens, the bank just wants cash offers. They don't want a mortgage or a loan or anything like that. Just give me cash, right? And so this said it was foreclosed on, cash only, and then in the payment options or in the description, it said multiple financing options available. And so I was like, that's peculiar. This house has been listed for 160 days, which is a long time in this market. So maybe something's wrong with it. It's a 4-bed house for $230,000 or something like that. I don't know what's wrong with it. So Grace showed me how to look through the MLS, and I found that it hadn't had a roof permit pulled since 2005, meaning that the newest the roof would possibly be is from 2005. So it's 20 years old. A roof usually only has like a 20-year lifespan, and a bank won't give you a mortgage if the roof is about to cave in because they don't want to lend you a bunch of money, have the roof cave in, you can't pay it, now you default on the mortgage, right? Now you can pay $100 for a roof inspector to come out and write you a note that says, hey, your roof looks good for another 3 or 5 years, and then the bank will give you a loan, right? Additionally, I looked into if you want a new roof, the FHA 3.5%. Did I talk about this last week? I think
Tell
I
it
did.
to me personally. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not.
Whatever. I'll wrap it up quick. The FHA 3.5% first time home buyer loan that you can get, you only put 3.5% of the purchase price down instead of a standard 10 to 20% down payment. You can get a provision on there called the 203K clause, which essentially will give you the money also needed to repair the roof. And then you just roll that into the mortgage for an additional couple interest points, right? And so I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this guy would be interested in buying the house. I know that they were talking about doing an FHA loan anyways, and so maybe we can 203 it. And then Grace called the selling agents because I can't contact anybody because I'm not a licensed agent. So this isn't my client and this isn't, my deal. So Grace called them. And they were like, yeah, no, we're only doing hard money loans or cash options, which is basically like you go get a loan from someone and give them the lump sum all at once. Because there's something wrong with the foundation. We don't know what it is. I'm like, fuck. So we had to scrap that one. But we found a couple others that were interesting. And so Grace took him on a house showing on Friday. I was there, but it wasn't my showing because I'm not working with a brokerage. It was Grace's showing. She signed the broker buyer agreement with this guy, and we showed the house. And it went really well. They ended up not liking this particular house, but afterward they were like, hey, I wrote them an email with Grace and I was like, this is a really great learning experience. I got to know what other requirements are for the properties you're looking for. So we're going to start looking for these types of properties. And they were like, hey, actually, I think I want to up my ceiling by $100,000. So now we're looking for $350,000 house, which is awesome. And it's a serious buyer. They signed the buyer broker agreement with Grace. So essentially I'm helping lead gen with Grace, but I'm getting firsthand experience with working on this deal, like alongside Grace as she's doing everything, which is an awesome learning experience. And if I find a brokerage before this deal goes through, I can jump on the deal too, and then have that sale under my name as well, which would be sick. So So yeah, that went really well.
Very cool.
On top of that, I'm trying to find what brokerages to interview. I only want to interview like 5 because I don't want to like waste months interviewing for a place that I might not be at for a long time.
Yeah.
But I want it to be a good brokerage because name recognition goes a long way. So if the general community knows that a certain brokerage isn't desirable, it doesn't matter how good of a real estate agent I am if the brokerage already has a bad name.
Yeah.
So I'm using Google reviews. So I wrote a formula that takes the stars, the average stars that a place has, the number of reviews, and then gives it a weighted formula because some place with more reviews is a more accurate score than a place with low reviews. So like a place with 1 star but 1 review isn't as accurate as a place with 3 stars with 100 reviews. So in that instance, the one with 1 star is actually rated pretty similarly because the average uh, rating for a brokerage in Melbourne is like 4 stars or something like that. So
Okay.
up to 100 reviews, the 4-star weight is more powerful than the number of reviews. And then after 100 reviews, the review score is more important than the 4-star rating. So that's how I'm determining what brokerage to interview with. But that's my business update. I have a bunch of stuff for my life update this week too, but
Cool.
PLDR, things are going well. My next step after this apartment, I'm going to finish this apartment complex sheet. And then after that, it's going to be picking a brokerage and start doing interviews.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
What's your life
Very
update?
nice. Very nice. Not much of a life update during the week.
Yeah.
Pretty much work and then work after work. But yesterday you'll talk about the car work
Yeah.
that mostly you did and I watched.
No, you helped.
A little bit, yeah.
I could not have done the headlights without you.
That's true. So I did a little bit of that yesterday. And then I went to Pauhana briefly for about an hour yesterday just to kind of like hang out and see a few people and whatever and
What
chill.
was that?
It was good. Yeah.
Cool.
It was nice to get out. I wanted to drive the Miata around a little bit too. It was nice weather. And so I
Yeah.
was like, I'll take a, hour off or hour and change off and go down there. And, today I went to the beach, and cut my foot up real bad. So
Stepping in
good.
rock ditches.
stepping in rock ditches in the water that I couldn't see. So cut my foot up, which is currently bleeding through my sock. And but that's about it for my life update. Got a bunch of stuff probably planned for the coming weeks in terms of car work and whatever that I need to do on my stuff. So
What are you doing?
I gotta do oil change on the Miata, and tire rotation and air filter cleaning. And then on the Beamer, I want to try and do the window regulator, the seatbelt buckle, and the front brakes and front control arms if I can.
Gotcha.
So just like a handful.
At Autobahns?
I don't know if I'm going to do it at Autobahn because they're selling half that place. So I don't even know what this deal is with me using lift space anymore because it's not really like they were renting technically before and they're still renting now. But I don't know what the deal is going to be with the landlord because I don't know the landlord.
Right.
So I don't really know. I'll probably end up doing it at home and then taking it to Gatto's during the week at some point.
Got it.
Or just dropping it off there for a few days and I can pick it up at my convenience or whatever.
If you need help, let me know.
I will.
Cool.
I may need some help with the control arms.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Those are fun.
Yeah, well, we did the Camaro's control arms at your place, so
That is true. That
it's
is
like me paying you back for the help with that.
fair enough.
But yeah, yesterday we did. I overfilled my Camaro with oil like a month ago because I burn oil pretty consistently. So when the low oil light comes on, I throw a quart in and then I just ride it. Right. But I filled it up with a quart, and then the next day my low oil light came back on. So I was like, oh, I must be burning more oil. That's not abnormal for this car. So I filled it up, turned my car on, noticed my oil pressure gauge was higher than normal, and I was like, So I let the car warm up, still higher than normal, and I was like, So I checked the dipstick and I overfilled it. So I was like, okay, I don't have the money for an oil change right now or the time, so I'm just not going to rev it above like 2,500 RPM. I'm just not going to push the pressure because it's not like super overfilled. It's just like decently overfilled. So I didn't drive the car hard at all for like a month. And since I burn oil, my spark plug started to foul. So now I'm not driving the car hard, can't clean off the spark plugs, and I have a misfire at low RPM. So the car's just been running like shit. So yesterday we did an oil change. We changed the spark plugs, got a new oil level sensor in there, and we changed my low beam headlights that you got me for my birthday and I hadn't put in yet. I think,
And a drain plug.
and a new drain plug.
That was a lot of fun.
That was terrible. Yeah, I don't know how my dad fucked that up, but the car drives way better now. I really enjoyed driving it today. I haven't been able to push the car in like a month and a half, so I've forgotten how happier I am. How much happier I am. I swear to God, I speak English. I know it. I forgot how much happier I am being able to push the car. Even on the shitty tires that I have on the rear right now. But I'm happy. So
Nice. Very nice. Good to hear.
yeah. My other life updates is that F1 is coming back. They did
Whoop,
the
whoop.
first on-track testing this week. So the first race is not this upcoming weekend, but the one afterward. But it's good to see the cars back out again. The hype is building for the season. It's Lewis Hamilton's first season with Ferrari. So I'm stoked. And the Lego F1 cars, the Speed Champion sets, the cars that are like this big.
Yeah.
They came out with F1 cars yesterday. And so while we were grocery shopping for meal prep last night, we do some grocery shopping at Target. So I stopped there. They didn't have them. We went to Walmart on the way to Sprouts. They didn't have it either. And then I have a secret Lego location in Melbourne that I'm not going to put on the podcast. But I went there at like 10 o'clock at night and they had them. So I got them.
Really?
Yeah. And I didn't have time to build them last night. I did meal prep this morning, so I didn't get to build them either. So I think tonight I'm going to take a little bit of time to build those at home.
I used to be that way with Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
I know what shifts,
Yep.
like what people work and when that stuff gets put out at what stores and when to look for it.
My coworkers that way.
Yeah. I used to know it,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
fun,
dude, these things are flying off the shelves everywhere. Like
I'm sure.
when I went to look to see if they had it in stock at Walmart, and it said that over 100 sets had been sold from that Walmart in like the last hour. And I was like, okay, they're probably not at the Walmart, but I'm going to check anyways. They didn't even have them on the shelves. I don't even know how the fuck they must have sold from that Walmart online or something.
People are probably pulling it out of the fucking cardboard boxes on the pallets.
Dude,
I used to do that with Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
I'd go around to the pallets and I'd know what boxes are specifically Hot Wheels.
Right.
And I'd wait for fucking staff to leave and I'd pull it out, go to a different aisle and fucking cut it open and grab what I want.
I had I checked, the secret compartments under the shelves.
Mhm.
You know about those? I lifted that up to check yesterday and Grace was like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "Yeah, kids who have parents who won't buy them shit will hide stuff in here for when they can come back with their own money later to buy it." She was like, "How do you know this?" And I was like, "I am that kid. You're just grown up now. I don't have the money, but I'm going to spend it today anyways." But they had the big doors to the back rooms open. And I was like, maybe I could just go back there and find them. And Grace was like, no. And I was like, I need a sales associate to help me find them. And that's the fastest way to get a sales associate to come help me, right? But I didn't. I went to my secret spot and I got it.
Nice.
So I'm stoked.
I had a friend in college that back when Walmart was 24/7 before COVID, he went to Walmart at like 3 a.m. with a bunch of his friends and they played hide and seek in the back warehouse portion.
Oh my God.
And they like climbed up on the rafters and shit.
What the
And
fuck?
looked like fucking, because there was like maybe 2 staff working.
Oh, before COVID. Okay.
Before COVID at like 3 a.m. when it was 24/7.
Working there in
Walmart?
the morning. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They would fucking went back into the warehouse and like climbed the rafters and played hide and seek.
I've seen the videos of people doing like overnight challenges and stuff at Walmart.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. So I'm stoked to have these sets.
Nice.
I learned a cool thing as well, also related to racing. So Graham Hill is the only driver to have completed the Triple Crown, which is winning the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, and Le Mans. Right? He was also a rower.
Oh,
I didn't know that. That's so cool. I also didn't know that he's the only driver to have ever done it.
Yeah.
Which is sick. But I think Fernando Alonso, did he win the Indy 500?
I don't know. Doesn't sound familiar.
I don't know. I thought he won the Indy 500. I know he's won at Monaco. Certainly. He has to have, right? I don't actually know. I don't know anything.
You go look it up.
I thought it was cool. But after clicking on that video on YouTube, I saw another video which talked about one of the hidden skills that makes great athletes separated from good athletes. And the metric is how long a great athlete looks at something. So for golfing, good athletes look at the ball when they're putting for like 300 milliseconds or something, right? But great athletes will look for like 410 milliseconds. So like 20% longer. Same thing with basketball shots. They did a study with the WNBA, so take it with a grain of salt. But the girls who were shooting really well looked at the hoop and the ball going into the hoop for an average of longer before taking the shot.
Interesting.
And so they took a group of girls who were shooting like shit and they said, hey, look at it longer. And they measured it with like the head camera thing, right? And when they looked even like 100 milliseconds longer, which is the length of time it takes you to blink your eye, right? If you look for even 100 milliseconds longer, their accuracy went up by 20%. And this is across hockey, baseball, basketball, golfing, everything. What's interesting with baseball is they measured it with people at bat. So like swinging the bat to hit the ball, right? What's interesting is you can't look at the pitch I can't look at the pitch for longer than you can because every pitch is the same in length because everyone throws the ball at roughly the same speed, right?
Yeah.
The determining factor there is how good your vision is. Because
Oh, yeah.
the average person sees 20/20. That's how 20/20 is. You see something at 20 feet away that everyone else sees at 20 feet away, right? Baseball players, the best baseball players, have better than 20/20 vision. They have like 20/12 vision or something
Yeah.
like that. They can see from 20 feet that most people can only see from 12 feet away.
Yep.
And so if you can see and recognize the pattern earlier because you have better vision, you're essentially decreasing or increasing the amount of time that you're looking at it, right? And so I thought that was really interesting, especially in comparison with racing, where you want to be looking as far ahead on the track as possible. So if I'm looking at a corner well in advance,
Yep.
by the time I get to the corner, I have been looking at it the entire straight. So now I can start to look for the next corner as I enter the corner.
Yep.
Right. Whereas when I first took you out, and I think the Camaro on Rockledge Drive, I wasn't doing that. I was looking at the corner as I was going through the corner. And one of your remarks was you should try to looking further ahead more, right? And I saw he didn't bring it up in the video, but I thought that was a really cool comparison.
That is cool.
Yeah. My next life update is that apparently in rowing, US rowing changed their racing categories from it used to be 1V, 2V, 3V, 4V freshman boat. So like 1V is the first varsity, 2V is the second varsity, etc. And then there used to be like a U15 or U16 category for kids under 15 and kids under 16. But that was kind of like if they don't have a 3V category in that event, maybe they have a U15 category, and so you race that boat. The previous coaching staff at Space Coast Crew, I noticed, started to race more of those U categories because they were less competitive. So they could increase their win rate and then thus be better coaches, right? Artificially. By proxy, they also did have strong varsity boats, but they emphasized the U boats. Well, now Justin is coaching at Space Coast, and he's talking about how they're changing some of their V boats to U boats. And I was like, why the fuck are they doing that? Apparently, US Rowing changed their category to U class boats. And that's fucking pissing me off because it should be the fastest boat that you can make, not the fastest boat that you can make for an age. Because there's some fucking crazy looking 16-year-old guys out there who are fucking hulking. They should be in the fastest boat, not rowing with the other kids in the U16 category. It's stupid and I hate it. And I wanted to vent about it here because maybe in the future someone from US Rowing watches this video and they know that I hate them. And then my last thing, do you know what demo is? So I was at Powhana earlier this week, and a dude stopped by. His name's Wesley, who sells home security systems, and he was telling me, he's like, "Yeah, I bought an Airbnb, and then it got knocked out by a hurricane, so now I'm in debt. So now I'm selling home security systems to try to make up my debt, et cetera, et cetera." And I was like, "Okay, he seems like a salesman. Like he's a young salesman who like kind of seems like he'll tell you anything to try to get a sale, you know." And I respect the hustle to an extent. But he was like, yeah, I have this crypto miner that I plug into my OBD2 port in my car, and it mines crypto while I drive. And I was like, no, you don't. And he was like, yeah, it mines crypto while I drive. It uses the electricity from the car. And I was like, that can't be true. That's not how crypto miners work. Do you know how crypto miners work? And he was like, well, yeah, it's like computers and stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. It's kind of like saying that nuclear reactors use computers and stuff, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, there's people with entire rooms of computers that do really terrible crypto mining. Like just they don't have the computing power to find like the next prime number.
Yeah, your fucking engine control module isn't going to have the computing power to fucking mine crypto. On what fucking network?
Exactly. And so here's like, I was like, you're not making any money on that. He's like, I've already made my money back. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, well, it costs $120 to buy. I bought it 3 weeks ago and I've made $150. And I was like, what? And he was like, here, I have it on the app. So he pulled up his app. Here's what I determined it is. In the app, it shows his location. It shows what percentage his fuel tank is filled up to. It shows what his TPMS sensors say. It shows what the average traveling speed, average trip meter of the car is. It's collecting car data. And the company that collects that car data, because you have it plugged into your OBD2 port, so it can read from your PCM or ECU, it sells that data. It sells your car data. And then you get payment in this company's crypto coin. So this company, I don't know what the full company is called, but their crypto coin is called Demo. You get Demo when they sell your data. And then, the more they sell, the higher the crypto coin goes up. And so like, let's just say it bottoms out, the company closes and you lose all your stock, right? Well, you essentially lose $120 because of this thing, right? But you can sell your crypto coin, whatever, and turn it into money. And I was like, that's a really interesting business idea.
That is interesting.
That I hadn't considered. but I thought it was cool. It did not work the way this kid thought it did, but the TLDR is the same, which is it costs $120 and you get free money essentially.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. I did have one more quick life thing that I thought of.
Sure.
I spent like 30 minutes a day this week watching the 5 episodes of the Chernobyl documentary series.
On HBO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been wanting to watch this fucking series for
It's
2
sick.
years.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it because I was like, I don't want to waste time to watch it. And I was like, I finally got to the point I cracked. I was like, I think about it more. I spend more time thinking about it than I would just fucking finishing it. And so I watched it this week. It's excellent.
Is it
I
good?
loved it. It was super awesome. Highly recommend it. I do not watch fucking television, but
Yeah.
like it was good. I liked it a lot.
The Chernobyl HBO show,
Yeah.
and I think HBO also has a 9/11 documentary with
Oh,
like
interesting.
videos of people jumping out of the tower.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
horrific.
The
It's got-
Chernobyl one was fucking gruesome too at times.
yeah, it was awesome.
That guy's fucking face all fucked in the
Yeah.
hospital. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, that was rough to watch.
That was good. My thing with the Chernobyl one is it's awesome and they use a lot of real photos and stuff, but it is actors telling the story, right?
Yes.
But in the 9/11 one, it's like news footage and like, oh, Joe was outside filming his like wife in her new dress and then a plane hit the tower, right?
Yep.
And it has firsthand accounts. Dude, there's one, I can't remember. It's like they're interviewing a guy and he is a firefighter and his brother was working in one of the other buildings. And so he was personally motivated to go do the firefighting to try to find his brother. And like he tells the whole story and he's crying throughout the entire thing. And he like pulls apart the rubble and he finds his brother's body like in the rubble and he starts crying and like he doesn't know if he's alive. So he starts doing CPR and like there's no pulse or anything. And then it cuts to like the camera just like pans out a little bit in the interview and the other brother's sitting there and he starts telling the story from his perspective. Dude, I'm tearing up thinking about it. It's an incredible documentary. It's an incredible documentary.
Wow.
I might buy HBO tonight to watch it while I build my.
I bought HBO just to fucking watch Chernobyl.
You should send me your passwords. But yeah, dude. No, yeah, it's great. You should pull up. I'll find the name of that 9/11 one for you to watch. Just have it on in the background or like when you.
Yeah.
I was watching it as I went to sleep at night.
Mm.
Yeah, because I'm fucked in the head, I guess. I don't know. All right, that's all I have for my life update.
Yes, me too.
Okay, today's topic is on the ego trap in business, and our first segment is on. Actually, let me read a little intro first because I have something written out. So for the ego trap in business, when I come up with these ideas, I write like a little description that basically talks about where the idea came from. That's what this is. So I recently listened to Greg's new podcast with Matt Cox, which is centered around the timepiece gentleman. Have you seen it yet?
No.
The TLDR is, let's say you have a watch, right? And you think it's worth like $50,000. You come to me, the timepiece gentleman, and I say, hey, you think it's worth 50? I bet I can get it sold for 60. I'll get it sold for you for 60. You get 55 and I keep 5. You say, okay, you give me the watch and then I leave. And then 6 months later, you message me and you're like, where's my fucking 50 grand? And then I go, dude, it's on my way. Like, I'm going to get sold. Like, I have a meeting this weekend. And then I hit you back with a phone call and I go, oh my God, dude, my fucking car got broken into and like your watch got stolen. I'm so sorry. Right? So watch fraud. That's what this guy's. So Greg did a deal with this guy before he started scamming people because Greg's into watches. And so he went onto the Matt Cox podcast because this guy was just arrested. So Greg started talking about it. But I realized in this podcast, especially around watches and stuff, like a lot of people buy watches as a status symbol. Some people buy it just because they like it. But like, let's face it, you're not spending 50 grand because you like something. You're probably going to be buying it to show off to people. And I realized
maybe.
Well, that's the whole point of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
But in this instance, I realized that wealth and business status is very meaningful to a lot of people.
That is true.
Especially with Greg and this Matt Cox guy, because they're into watches and they like to show people that they have this wealth and status. It's a quick way to show other people that, you are rich and powerful or whatever, right? In talking to Tyler about real estate, I realized again that showing your wealth seems to be at the top of everyone's priority list. Tyler and I were talking about cars. He was like, oh, you should buy a new car with your first paycheck. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a Miata. I'm stoked. And he was like, you should get a Mercedes or BMW. And I was like, no, why would I do that? And he was like, well, think about it this way. If someone comes up to an open house and you're parked there in a BMW or a Mercedes, they know you're a successful salesman. And I was like, no, they just think I like Mercedes. And he was like, no, they'll think that you're a successful salesman, even if you've never sold anything. And I was like, I'd rather just sell stuff. Like, I'd rather just be a good salesman and have that speak for myself, which is why I'm so focused on this Google review and not my fucking shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm clearly going back to my written word here. I'm very resistant to this idea that it is a priority. I'd love to take a moment to reflect on our current ego state and set a baseline that we can later compare ourselves to when we do reach comparable levels of wealth and status in $50,000 watches. So our first segment, taking personal opinion out of it and just thinking from a objective standpoint, why wealth and status are desirable. So before we delve into our personal positions on the matter, I want to better understand why all the people in these examples lust after status and wealth, and particularly flaunting it. I think better understanding it might help me understand why so many people not only want to possess these attributes, but want other people to see them with it too. So just looking at the benefits, what do you think wealth and status can bring to someone?
Well, I think part of it is I think there is some truth to Tyler's idea of like if you have a nice car or a nice watch, like that does look like you are successful and therefore you might be thought of as more successful even if that isn't true.
Right.
Um I think that there's an aspect of it too that getting wealth or status is challenging
Hmm.
and it's not something that everyone achieves, and so to kind of make it known that you're built different from the crowd, I think has a little bit of extra oomph underneath of it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I mean, wealth and status do can solve a lot of problems in your life too, just from a literal standpoint. Money problems are a primary problem in a lot of marriages, a lot of long-term relationships, personal issues with credit card debt, right? So wealth and status can kind of alleviate a lot of things. Or, if you get into a bind in some situation at work or whatever, you get fired. Like if you have some decent wealth saved up or some status, like you can very easily find another avenue to make some money or find an alternative path
Yeah.
relatively quickly.
I have here wealth decreases stress. So as wealth increases, the stresses of like rent and car payments and grocery shopping and everything else kind of falls away.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I think over half of divorces are as a result of finance issues,
Hmm.
like disagreements on how to spend the money or where they're going to get more money or et cetera, right? I've been watching, or I'm not anymore, but I used to watch a lot of the Financial Audit with Caleb Hammer.
Yeah.
You seen that guy? He's like a younger Gordon Ramsay, or not Gordon Ramsay, Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
Um, but yeah, a lot of the couples that go on there disagree about their spending, and like that's why they're in dire financial circumstances because they don't agree on how to spend money.
Yeah.
But
Like,
yeah, I agree.
um,
I have
but
also
we're not focusing on personal opinions yet.
right.
Um,
We're just talking about like what.
but I would say that it's definitely overall desirable, even putting outside of personal opinion, because you can solve a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
In your life, you know, there are some negatives that come alongside it. Like I think people tend to judge people who are wealthy, or like not everyone, of course, but there's a decent amount of people out there that are kind of have the fuck the rich perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that can have a negative impact on your communication with some people in your life and stuff like that. I mean, to that, I would say like, w- if those people leave you because you figure out how to make more money or you become successful or whatever, were they really super valuable in the first place? Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of a superficial thing to judge someone on. I think, like, if you're not going to be friends with someone just because they're wealthy, like, I think that's pretty superficial. That kind of
Yeah.
neglects like the entire aspect of who they are as a human.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
stereotypical.
Yeah.
It's like you don't hate rich people, you hate assholes,
Yeah.
right? For the same reason that like black people commit more crime than white people, but that doesn't mean you should hate black people. That means you should hate criminals, you know?
All right.
Like
Yeah.
you're what's it called? You're throwing out the baby with the bathwater,
Yes.
right? Don't hate rich people, hate assholes. Don't hate
Yeah.
black people, hate assholes. Like I think that everyone can get on the same page with hating people who treat other people like shit, right? And you can either treat people like shit by taking from them with force as a criminal, or you can treat people like shit by taking from them like subtly, like how large businesses will take, like insurance companies will take your insurance and then not cover things, right?
Right.
It's easy to hate either perspective, but to group everyone in together because of, the percentage that treat people like shit, I think is immoral at its foundation.
Do you think that some people shoot for wealth and status so that they can just solely flex on other people?
I think that's a key motivator for a lot of young guys.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of young guys are motivated by that. like the Wolf of Wall Street type,
Yeah.
like probably the salesman guy who I met earlier this week, Wesley. I think that he's motivated largely externally and not very
Do
internally.
you think that that has benefits?
What?
Or do you think it's all to chase wealth, just to flex on other people? Do you think that that has any benefit outside of like financial stability? Because you will ultimately gain financial stability if you become wealthy, but you sacrifice in so many other avenues, like your ability to communicate with other people who may not have your status and wealth, your effectivity in how you present yourself in a community or group, your ability to self-reflect and your perspective on yourself is probably tainted because you always think of yourself as gold because you are wealthier than the people around you.
I think it's probably the Andrew Tate effect, where it's the people who like you love you, and the people who don't like you hate you. You just become more polarizing. So like the number of people who tolerate or enjoy you probably dwindles, but then you are refining that to the people who really, really love you. The
Do you think
problem
that's
is,
a pro or a con?
for me personally, it's a con. Just because I don't want my activities to be determined by how I'm judged by other people. Like when I was in my last relationship, afterward, I realized that it wasn't a healthy relationship because I would wake up in the morning not knowing how my day was going to go. I didn't know if I was happy or sad because I haven't checked in with my girlfriends yet. And depending on how they're feeling is how I'm going to feel that day. So if they're upset about something, I'm going to be upset about something until I can fix it for them. And if they're happy, then I'm happy. And I don't want my emotions to be determined by other people. So if I'm not wearing a nice watch or a nice pair of shoes and other people are judging me because my watch is lesser, I don't want that to affect me. And similarly, I don't want people to like me because of what I have. I want people to like me because of who I am. And
Mm,
similarly, if people are going to dislike me, I want them to dislike me for who I am, not what I have or how I use it. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
I think status is useful though. Here I have status increases your influence, and influence can help rally people for a good cause. Many people may not be willing to contribute to an effort if they don't know or care about the representative, right? Um, So like I give money each month to the Paul Rosalie Jungle Keepers Foundation,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
I love the Amazon, always have. I've never really known where to give money, and that's not an excuse to not give money because there's, hundreds of associations out there that are for it, right? But knowing like seeing long form podcasts with Paul Rosalie makes me feel like I know him personally. And so his status is having an influence on me because now I'm giving him, my money every month, right? Similarly with Drive to Survive, like a huge number of people didn't really care about Formula One, even if they had seen it like in passing until Netflix made the documentary on it and put a face to the names. And like now you feel like Lando Norris. Now they have more status and more influence on you. So now you're gonna buy the F1 TV pass and start watching the races, right? Um, that can be used for good or it can be used for bad, right? And I think that the difference between the two is usually pretty clear from the outside, but kind of murky once you're in it, right? So, like, the people who really love Andrew Tate would say, oh, well, what Andrew Tate is doing in his polarizing influence is encouraging me to be the best person that I can be, right? And people on the outside of it would say, well, he's encouraging you to be the best version of you by tearing down others. And like, both are true. And it just depends on what side of the perspective you're on.
Mm,
And so that's the tricky balance with having status is that when you have the influence of other people in the palm of your hand, the way that you use that, I think, is almost always going to be polarizing. I think there will almost always be people who think that you could be doing it better or doing it differently or not doing it at all.
yeah, yeah. I had this argument. It wasn't an argument. It was a discussion with someone at work in regards to Doge and Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and I didn't quite get a good grasp on their perspective. But from what I gathered, they felt as though Elon Musk was unqualified to figure out this financial spending and figuring out what to cut, and that he wasn't intelligent enough to be in that position, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, maybe he's doesn't know the inside out of, you know, every single piece of spending that USAID has.
Hmm.
No one does. But, maybe he doesn't know every single little bit of this, or maybe he doesn't know the specific code that they use for Social Security checks and how that
Yeah.
translates into age and blah blah blah. Like maybe there's a couple gaps. But to argue that he's not intelligent enough to figure it out completely negates all of the evidence that he's extremely intelligent and is capable of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Right. And so my point in telling this little story is like there's always going to be certain portions of people that look to the negative in regards to your status and wealth because they're just going to point the finger and go, oh well, you're just after more money, or you don't know how to do this thing, or like you might be good at that but you're not good at this. Like there's a lot of people that are always finding something to put someone else down about.
Right.
um
And that's not
but
shit,
there's
man.
also right. Yeah, but there's also going to be a good group of people that I think do see the reason in it and do see the potential in whatever work Elon is doing or whatever wealthy person or high status person you're looking at, and will go, you know what, maybe they have X, Y, and Z that they are still trying to figure out and work on, but I have confidence that they can because they've shown that A, B, and C they do really well.
Right. Well,
Right.
and Elon Musk might not be qualified in the sense that he doesn't have a lot of experience with running a government department, right?
Right.
But at the same time, does it take a fucking rocket scientist to figure out that transgender animal studies in Africa is not a good use of taxpayer money? And if so, he's a fucking rocket scientist.
Yeah.
So like, what are we splitting hairs about here? Like
Yeah.
it's not difficult to figure out, right? And you could also make the argument that the people who are most qualified might also be the most corrupt. Because if you have the most experience in something, you have the most skin in the game. And so
True.
are you a trustworthy person to put in front of that? I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the Elon argument is baffling to me because I love Elon for the same reason that I love Trump, which is they don't need your fucking money. Like they
Yeah.
have enough money.
Trump is the only president in over 40 years that did not increase his wealth during his 4-year presidency.
Yeah. He donated his salary to charity.
Yeah, but
Yep.
also his net worth actually decreased over the last
Sure.
4 years that he was president.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that is the first time in 40 years that we've seen that.
Right. And so then once you take that argument away, then the people who would make that argument pivot to, oh, well, they want power. And it's like,
Right.
okay, what do you think they're going to do with that power? Because usually having power leads to having more money, right?
Yeah.
But they aren't doing that.
No.
And even then, like, I saw something the other day that was like SpaceX is getting more government contracts than ever before, right? And so that's
The
Elon
government
looking for
systems
more money.
are failing
Yeah, right. It's because the government system is failing.
because USAID is spending, and other government not well, USAID technically isn't a government organization, but government money is being spent through other companies on things that don't matter, causing inefficiency, and that's why these third-party companies like SpaceX are getting government contracts, or Northrop getting government contracts, or whatever, is because the actual government agencies and programs aren't efficient enough to fucking pump something out meaningful.
Right. And even if they like, let's just say that people are upset that Elon's getting more money, like indirectly because the government's giving more money to SpaceX, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Fucking, why not just cut him a check? Why not pay him directly? I would gladly pay him directly, right? Like if he decreased like the fucking government spending fraud by 50%, I don't mind paying him some of that.
Yeah.
Like I would put my tax dollars toward that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I don't understand that argument either, but I think, with that, a lot of people don't think critically about it. And what I've come to think more recently about, like, what's bad about cutting fraudulent spending? What's bad about the phrase "Make America Great Again"? What's bad about the phrase "All lives matter"? Like, all of these are good
Yeah.
things, right? Like, would you not also agree? Like, whoever you are, don't you want to see America do well?
Yes.
Don't you?
That's why I live
Don't
here.
you think that everybody's life is valuable? Like, don't those things make sense, right? And then they're corrupted by the people who are doing it. Like the people have that idea twisted because they don't like the guys doing it, because they don't feel like the guy is qualified, right? Like RFK's cousin came out with this big long TikTok video before he was under the Senate confirmation hearing to be the head health security guy, right? And she was like, he's not qualified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I don't know. Like, he's done a lot more research into like vaccine and health studies and large trends than I have, right? And of other, like, who the fuck are you to put up there? Fauci? Fuck off. Like,
Yeah.
he's making sense, right? Which is stop putting chemicals in our fucking food. I don't care who you are, what kind of education you have. I'm for that,
Yeah.
right?
Just common sense.
It's common sense. A lot of these things can be figured out by common sense.
But I think, to bring us back to the wealth stuff as well, is that I think a lot of people's hate towards wealth and status can be mitigated by just looking at situations with common sense and logic and reason.
Yeah.
Like, there are wealthy people that are pieces of shit, and then there's wealthy people that do a lot of really awesome things.
Right.
And additionally, it's not, I don't think it's the position of people who are less wealthy to figure out what the best way is for them to spend their money either. Like, I think,
It's a good way of putting it.
right, like, if you're someone making 50K a year, like, you don't have the bandwidth to be able to decide, or the knowledge to be able to decide what someone making 50 million a year spends their money on.
Right.
And like, you might look at that and go, oh, well, they only donate 1 million out of 50 million to charity.
Right.
And I look back at them and I go, how much do you donate to charity?
Yeah.
Right. Like, just because they have the capability potentially, which you don't even know because you have no idea what their expenses are, you have no idea what their plans are, you have no idea what their business growth is, you have no idea what they're looking at long term, right?
Right.
But even if they were capable of donating more, how much do you donate?
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's a similar thing of like, sometimes I look at, you know, um, charity organizations primarily, and it's just like, or different social movements, and I'm like, man, it would be really nice to like try to push this and this, or to bring it out of the social positions thing. Like, a lot of people in the car community are like, man, why don't new cars come with manuals anymore?
Mhm.
And I'm like, because all the people who want manuals aren't buying new cars.
Right.
Like, all the people who want
Buy
manuals
old
making
cars.
40 grand a year, 50 grand a year, and they're gonna put a fucking down payment on a brand new Porsche. Why do you fucking care that the 911 is going, maybe automatic? Like, yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I get it. It's cool to have manual everything, or a manual option for everything for the end of time. But if the people who are vouching for manuals until the end of time aren't the ones buying manuals in the first place, new manuals in the first place, then companies aren't going to have incentive to fucking, put a little gold star next to your name because you're not their fucking customer, right? And it's like, yes, it's sad. I wore a Save the Manual shirt today,
Right.
right? Because I love manuals. But like, I'm not going to fucking Toyota and be like, you need to make more manuals, because I haven't fucking bought a new Toyota, and I probably never will, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
it's just, it's not me, right? And
Right.
so it's just like, my point being is that I think there's a big discrepancy between um a lot of people's perspective about various wealthy people and how they spend their money, and then who those wealthy people actually are. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of benefits to wealth in terms of security and having freedom and being able to choose what you want to spend your money on, and traveling and starting up businesses and pushing yourself forward and creating the best version of yourself. But there's also a lot of cons in the sense of like, people are going to judge you inevitably, and you have to be prepared for how to address that.
Yeah. People judging for it is always like a conundrum for me, because I can see the argument about charity both directions. With the one argument being from the rich person, why do you care how I spend my money? Go live your life. And from the poor person saying, you have so much, you should give to those who don't have enough. Right. And the argument that someone who's wealthy should pay in charity equivalent to someone who isn't, like 50,000 versus 5 million a year. Right. I think the difference is, and I realize this in my own budgeting, when I make my budget every month, a lot of my money goes to living expenses. Like, a large chunk of my paychecks goes to paying rent and
Oh
groceries.
yeah.
As you increase your income, you can keep your living expenses the same, meaning you have a lot of extra income that you could donate, right? That maybe someone who's making $40,000 a year working at Walmart can't. But the capability of doing it isn't a reason. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And even if I can or should, doesn't mean you can tell me to. Right?
Also, those people might have big bills too.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, for me with drop shipping, my gross might be large over the course of a week, a few thousand or whatever, but my bills are also a few thousand.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, it looks like maybe I'm grossing a lot on paper, but in reality, like, it's a lot tighter than it looks.
Right.
At least right now, I'm hoping that margin grows. But, it's just like, outside of the person who's actually the wealthy individual, it's very hard to have perspective about what should and shouldn't happen about that individual.
I think Mr. Beast is a great example, because he, like, last year he made like $400 million or something, right?
Yeah.
But like, he spent like 399 million on videos, and he took home like 100,000 or something like that.
Right.
Like, that was his take home.
Yeah.
So yeah, great example of,
And it's cool. Everyone has a different view, and everyone's got different plans and different bills. But, I think you just have to judge the character of a person based on who they are, and not the value in their bank account and where you think that money should go.
yeah, it's like, you don't tell me how to spend my money, and I won't tell you how to spend your money.
Yeah.
Right. I think
Exactly.
it's different for taxes, because I think that everyone should be made to say, everyone should be made to pay the same percentage in taxes. I don't think rich people should pay more percent, or poor people pay more percent. I think everyone should pay the same percent. Ideally, that percent is 0. Maybe we'll see that this year.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, I also have written, I think this comes from a Hormozy quote. It's a Hormozish quote. Wealth increases your power, and power can be measured as the length of time between having an idea and turning it into reality, which I think is, again, it can be used positively or negatively, right? But I would say that regardless of how you use it for the person trying to attain it, it's a benefit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's an awesome way to make your ideas come to life. I
Yeah.
mean, we were even talking about this yesterday working on the cars. We were just brainstorming like, "Oh, it'd be cool to do this with a Miata, or it'd be nice to do this with the Porsche, or it'd be cool to have this with the Camaro."
Yeah.
And then we got through our, like, 5-minute spiel, and we were like, "Money could solve all these problems very quickly."
yeah,
And it's just like, it's the fact of life, and I think p some people demonize it. I think there are mixed reasons why people demonize wealth.
yeah,
I think part of it is jealousy. I think part of it is, uh them trying to justify that they don't need to pursue anything different because wealth doesn't make you happy anyway, and then they'll pull up examples of people who are sad anyway, even though they're wealthy,
right.
right? Which isn't very convincing to me. Um, but it's wealth does solve a lot of problems, and it has some stigma to it. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but
Yeah.
um, yeah,
The wealth not fixing sadness thing is so curious to me because it's people who are like, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head who I know personally, but say someone from the bar is like, "Oh, um, why are you working all the time?" Then I'll say, "It's because I enjoy it." And they'll go, "Wealth won't make you happy." And then I'll say, "Well, I'm already happy because I'm working."
mm,
Like, you're happy not working. You're happy hanging out at the bar, and I'm happy while I'm working.
yeah,
Neither one of us are sad. No one here is claiming money is going to make me less sad. I'm not sad, right?
mm,
I want to work, and as an awesome byproduct of the work is I get more money.
yeah.
So I'm not trying to solve
And I
my
think there,
happiness problem. I don't have one.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, And I think that ultimately there is a portion of wealth that can get you awesome things that are fun. Like
Yeah.
it would probably be fun right now to not have a 9 to 5, to have consistent passive income and be able to go to Miami just on a whim and fucking do
Ball
jet
out.
skiing.
Yeah.
Like that sounds fucking fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, probably if you do it for 5 years straight, you'll get bored of it and then you'll want to do something else. But like you don't even have the opportunity to do something else if you don't even have the money for it initially,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah, money you can't buy happiness, but you can buy opportunity that does present you happy moments and happy experiences.
Yeah. I forget who said the quote, but it's money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a Ferrari. And I haven't seen a guy driving a Ferrari with a frown on his face.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's and there's some truth to it. Like, yes, there are sad people who are wealthy. There are sad people in every single
But it's independent from the wealth.
right.
Right.
But it's just about who you are at the end of the day and like what your perspective is on life or the world or the people around you. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, and money can buy a lot of fun, cool shit.
Yeah. But it's similar to the donating to charity thing, where it's like, you can tell me that money won't make me happy. Neat. Is that you telling me to stop working? Because I don't care.
Right.
Similarly, oh, you have less money than me and you say that I should donate to charity? Neat. I don't care. Like, I'll do what I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I feel that people so often like trouble themselves trying to tell other people how they should do their shit instead of like just focusing on their own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
The last one that I have here is that status feeds self-confidence. And the more others show affection toward you, the more confident you'll be in yourself. It's like external validation. If everyone else loves me, then I must be great. So I'll love myself, right? Um, and that can be positive for someone who struggles with self-confidence, or even someone who doesn't struggle with self-confidence. It still feels good to make a room laugh, right?
Yeah.
And I think that can also be a net positive. The problem is it can also go to someone's head, and then you think that you're better than other people, which is a great segue into our second segment if you don't have anything else. Okay. So segment 2 is how egotistical people look to the rest of us. Now that we've clearly defined why status and wealth are desirable, I think it's clear to see how quickly attaining these can go to a person's head and lead them into thinking they're better than everyone else. Feeling as though you're better than someone else is at the core of having an out of control ego. But consider this: wealth and status are not easy to attain. Recall people calling Elon stupid despite him being the richest print man on earth.
AOC. Sorry, that
No, you're right.
from a AOC makes me fucking. It's dude, so funny.
Talking about the dumbest person on earth. Do you think there's some level of validity to someone feeling better than others if they have truly accomplished more than them?
I don't know if it stems from the accomplishments. I think the only potential where it could be valid is when you are with someone who has consistently prevented themselves from even trying to reach what they are capable of. Like, I'll judge people who I know are intelligent, I know are capable of something more, but they choose to sit and watch Netflix every day. Like, I don't judge them off of like oh, well, like, why don't you get a better job? Why don't you make more money? Oh, you don't have like a nice car? Like, what's wrong with you? Right? It's not from that perspective. It's from the perspective of I know you're capable of more and I know you can do better. And I know that you can make an impact on the world and the people around you. Why aren't you doing it?
Right.
Like you will grow so much and you can do so much with your life.
Right. You're not reaching your
Not
full
doing
potential.
anything right now. Why?
Right.
It's like I think of that Joey Diaz skit of like, you ever met someone who just does nothing? You know, and they don't do nothing. They don't suck toes. They don't do drugs. Right? It's like that. It's like I like people who do something. You know what I mean? It's like it's similar to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like push for something. It doesn't like the outcome is important to me. It's just that like you're an intelligent individual and you're capable of so much,
Right.
and your potential is so untapped, and it's a direct result of your lack of ability to think about self-growth and the importance of that. But maybe that's also a selfish perspective because I think that self-growth and going for those things is super important.
Well, it's like how you don't get upset at a paralyzed person for sitting around all day. Right?
No, but
because they're sitting like they can't, right?
right.
But if you have someone who's like physically capable, like this is why I'm upset with fat people. Because it's a choice. Because you can eat less and move more and you choose not to. And then you choose to impose that on me by telling me that I need to make airplane seats wider, right? Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Make the fucking
I should pay for your second seat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly that. Or that I should pay for universal health care to fucking fix your problems, whatever. It's like at the base of it, it's like fat people frustrate me the same way lazy people frustrate me, which is they're not even trying to hit their potential. Like someone, if I'm really struggling to find the words. I love this point, but it's like someone who isn't perfect but is trying. I have a huge amount of respect for, even if they haven't hit their potential yet. If they're moving in that direction,
yeah, that's awesome
right.
because everyone starts somewhere.
Right.
Right? Like Elon Musk, for example, to take the extreme example, grew up in South Africa and had a really rough childhood, came to the United States, and now has like several of the greatest companies in the world. What are you laughing about?
Have you seen the TikTok?
I've thought of this same meme. I think you're thinking of the same one I did.
Eli's gotta go back to where he came from. Have you seen that one? Yeah. He goes South Africa. She's like, oh, gotta go. He blocks off screen. Dude, I saw a TikTok the other day too that was like what everyone thinks South Africa looks like, and it's like a hut in a village, and it's like what South Africa actually looks like, and it's South Africa, it's the city.
Yeah.
And like all the comments are people going like, I thought this was Wakanda. What the fuck?
Like, yeah.
The fucking moronacy, the idiocy of the average person is just fucking overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's like he is someone who had the potential to take every excuse that he wanted to take to not become successful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I think everyone is going to become an Elon Musk of like zero to ultimate hero in terms of their success.
Right.
But I think that you can go from like whatever base level you're at plus 10 points through just like a little bit of hard work and a little bit of pursuit in something to better yourself some amount.
Yeah.
Like just pick something. Like someone who pushes for just that little bit more, that little bit extra, or wants to try this thing, like that I appreciate.
Right.
You know, for the people who are just like, I'm gonna roll through life at this base level and I'm just gonna live this same way for my entire life. Like, you know, to each their own, but I think that's the only time where I would really be like, hey, like, don't you want to try and push yourself out of the box a little bit? Don't you want to try something a little bit different? And if you're happy, doing the same thing, rinse and repeat for 40 years, then go for it. There are a lot of there are a lot of people like that we need in the world. For example, construction workers. A lot of construction workers will, you know, start at the base level and then go up to manager, and then, start managing the managers and whatever, and just like kind of do the same routine of their 9 to 5 throughout their entire life, or tradesmen, right? Welders, painters, and stuff like that. But even then, like, if you're working up through the ladder, like, you're still pursuing something great. It's like, for the people who just stay in the same, for example, paint booth for their entire life, and paint the same Toyotas every single day for their entire life, and never think about even shooting for something better or something different, or trying to make improvements in the structure of how they paint or anything like that. To that, I'm like, you have potential that I know for a fact is untapped, because everyone has some potential beyond zero.
Right.
And the fact that you're not using any potential beyond zero, like, for you, I want you to do better.
Right.
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 That's kind of my spiel on that. But um, in terms of this, all stemmed from, how do egotistical people look at the rest of the world?
Let me read my thing real quick.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it. Because
Okay.
I'm going to put that exact same perspective, but with the spin of how it has to do with egotism. Right.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I struggle with this. I've struggled with this since you asked me like a year ago. You were like, "Do you think I'm better than you?" And I struggled with it because I was like, "Well, I think I'm the best." But that doesn't mean that I don't think you're as good as me.
Mm.
And I kind of struggle with it, and I was like, "No, I don't think so. Like, I have confidence in my ability, but I don't think that I don't think you're a worse person than me. I don't think I'm better than you." And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So here's my answer. It is acceptable, and it's a valid claim, if you are better than others at a specific skill or attribute. Being better at many or even all skills and attributes than someone else undeniably makes you objectively better than that person. By definition, it's valid to say that you're better than that person. The reason ego holds such a chokehold on the business industry is that people use this position to look down on those they are better than. That's what's unacceptable. So, like, Elon Musk is a better engineer than me. He has more experience, he knows more, he's better at it, right?
Mm.
I don't think that makes him a better person. That just makes him better at what we do, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, I think that all people, I don't think that there are better people than other people apart from like child molesters, right? They're the worst. But I think that the real issue when it comes to who's better and who's worse is when you're looking down on someone. Like, if you're going to use your position to shit on somebody with the intention of hurting them, not with the intention of motivating them. Like, Wesley, the salesman guy who sells home security systems. Shout out to Wesley. He worked for Vivint Security Systems. He and I were talking at the bar, um, and I was like, "Oh, what's your plan? Like, once you have your debt paid off, what's your plan?" He was like, "Oh, I really want to start a YouTube channel." And I was like, "Awesome. What do you want to start it about?" And he was like, "Well, I used to have a drug problem, and I want to make YouTube videos that help people currently with drug problems get better." Because a lot of people who are addicted to drugs can't afford therapy and don't have the like push to actually go fix themselves. So I want to make YouTube videos that will help them for free. And I was like, "That's awesome, dude. Why haven't you started?" And he was like, "Well, like, I need money and like I don't have time because I drive from Port St. Lucie every day. So I drive 4 hours a day and then I work 8 hours a day. So like I'm kind of busy." And I was like, "Yeah, I hear you, man. Have you considered just like putting a mic on and filming yourself on the drive?" He has a nice car. He has a 2021 Mazda. So it's got good sound dampening. Why don't you just record videos while you drive? And he was like, "Yeah, I guess I could do that. I don't know. I haven't thought of it, but like, I think I'm just gonna wait." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, like, I don't know. I don't know." And I was like, "Okay, tell me more. Tell me more about the videos that you want to make." And so he told me more, and I could tell he was passionate about it. And he was like, I was like, "Dude, this sounds awesome. Like, I really want to see you make these videos." And he was like, "Yeah, a lot of people tell me they're a good idea. I have a lot of good experiences." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Everyone says they think it's going to do really well." And I was like, "Dude, can I tell you something?" He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "It won't." He was like, "What?" And I was like, "It's not going to do well at all." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "It's going to be shit." And he was like, "Whoa, why?" And I was like, "'Cause you're never going to fucking start it. Start it.
Yeah.
Get a microphone. It's $20 on Amazon. Take one of mine. Take a microphone. Record yourself in the car and start now because tomorrow's always going to be easier, but start now." Right.
Yeah.
And so I was shitting on him a little bit but it was with the intention of like pushing him towards his goals to pursue his full potential.
Yeah.
Right. The problem, and so after that, Christian, who I think has also had problems with drugs before, was sitting down the bar, and I was like, Christian, would you listen to this podcast? Like, do you think this is a good idea? And he was like, yeah. And so then Wesley and Christian started having a conversation, and I went back to doing what I was doing. And Wesley was like, yeah, Mason over there was just telling me that I should get it started. And Christian was like, yeah. And Wesley was like, I don't know though. And Christian was like, I would listen to Mason on this one. And he was like, yeah, he makes some good points. And Christian was like, he has his own podcast like already. Like he kind of knows what he's doing in terms of like YouTube and podcasting and stuff. And he was like, wait, really? And Christian was like, yeah. And like, I think that a really egotistical person in that setting would flaunt it, right? They would flex it and they would probably try to be like, I know more than you, so you should listen to me. But I tried to not take the egotistical approach by just saying, like, just pushing him to do it more. Cause I know I can see that potential in him, and he doesn't need to know anything about me for him to reach his full potential.
Yeah.
Right. Christian just so happened to bring up that we have a podcast, right? But I'm hoping that he pursues that. But I think that at the fundamental point of it, the problem with ego is that it's putting yourself above others, right? Regardless of your skills and attribute level.
Yeah.
And that's my issue with the ego.
It's interesting that you had that conversation. I had a conversation with someone at the bar last night, and they were
Dox him.
What?
Dox him. Name drop.
Savannah.
I like Savannah.
Savannah's cool.
She's cool.
And she was talking about a little business idea that she has. And she's kind of keeping it on the down low, so I don't want to like disclose exactly like what.
How to say it. It's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. But she's she has this little business idea that she's working on, and she was telling me, she was like, I don't know what to do about like the fulfillment thing and like, you know, this other small thing. And I was like, you know, in summary, my suggestion was you can try to plan out. I told her, I started with, I used to try to plan like weeks in advance of like what would happen when and how things would go. And I've started planning like 6 hours in advance.
Yeah.
Because so much shit hits the fan that you don't expect all the fucking time, that it is so hard to figure out what you're going to be doing even tomorrow.
Right.
Because shit could hit like, I could have some copycatter from, I don't know, Australia download my entire site and all my advertisements, and now I have to throw everything out the window and file a bunch of DMCA reports to get it taken out. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but like shit like that hits the fan all the time.
You can get a car accident on the way home tonight.
Absolutely.
And then all your business shit goes out the window.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
it's like just start somewhere. You're not going to be able to create the perfect plan for fulfillment. You're not going to create the perfect ad the first time around. I fucking guarantee it.
Right.
Because I've created 16 just for this one business, and like they're still kind of mid.
Right.
And like those are like that's like tens and tens of hours of ad iterations and trying to make things better and trying to figure out this and trying to figure out that and operationalizing my structure and creating documents and all this other shit. Like it's just going to be rough, and you just have to start somewhere. Like you
Right.
just gotta just put one foot in front of the other. Don't get stuck trying to analysis paralysis your way to success, because it's not going to work.
Right.
Right. And like, you know, I'm always happy to send people resources and stuff like that. But you know, about your podcast thing, something interesting that I kind of experienced with the drop shipping thing was like, I was really, really excited to share like metrics with people.
Right.
I was like super, and I still am. And I still share metrics with you because you're my best friend. But you know, like I was really excited to just like share metrics. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm grossing like 600 today.
Right.
And I'm like, you know, my ad spend is like 300, my fulfillment's 150, but that means I make like $150 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was so excited to share that because like in my mind, I'm like, man, this is so cool.
Mhm.
Like, don't other people want to know too? Right.
Right.
But like, I genuinely didn't want it to come across as like, look at what I'm doing that you're not.
Right.
Right. I didn't want that. I wanted to share with my friends. Like this was exciting for me because like in my mind, it's like, oh man, like if I can get something like this going, like I can help the people around me. Like I can give good tips to people, and I could take my friends on cool trips, and we could do fun things together. And like, it's awesome. Like my money is to everyone's benefit around me because I take care of the people around me.
Right.
And I love doing that.
Right.
But like, that isn't how it necessarily came across to everyone. Cause I think
Did you have problems with people?
like just like subtle like lack of interest in the like sharing. Like I was like really excited to share.
Got it.
And like there was just this, it didn't feel like a barrier of like, I'm not interested in what you have to say. It felt like a barrier of, I don't
Must
really
be
want
nice.
to hear about it.
Must be nice. Yeah.
It felt like that kind of barrier. And like I haven't like really operationalized it to put a finger on like why it felt that way.
Yeah.
Well, I could just sense from a few people that it was a must be nice kind of thing rather than a like, oh, that's kind of cool. Not really like interested, but like cool, man.
Right.
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 And like after that, I realized it was just like weird. Like I just kind of like stopped sharing in like details and kind of just like talk about it in broad strokes now.
Yeah.
But it's like, that was like a real kind of like wake up call. Like I'd always heard about people being like, um, careful what you share, or like, be mindful of, um, or once you start seeing success in one place or another place, or even failure in one place or another place, like you'll really start to see like the colors of the different people around you come out,
Right.
because they'll start to point to your failures as a reason why it won't work, and they'll start to point to your successes of like why it's wrong.
Lucky.
Right.
Right.
Or it's lucky or whatever. Right. And like I started to see some dynamic of that. And I'm like, I haven't even been successful yet. I just had like some successful days and I had some shit days. And I just wanted to share because I love sharing with the people around me.
Right.
And like I share things with, they share things with me and I share things with them. And like this has been my life. Like I don't really have much life update for the past 2 months on
Right.
the podcast, right? Like this is my life.
Right.
And it's like I want to share my life. But it was just really interesting to like see that, and it surprised me a little bit, and like it was kind of a check for me too, because I was like, well, how am I presenting myself, and like am I presenting myself in a way, like I know how I want to present myself, but how am I actually conveying myself, and can that come across in X, Y, and Z way? And then it's a factor of, do I care if it comes across in X, Y, Z way? How much do I value this person's opinion in my life? How do those things balance out? I don't want to sacrifice who I am internally and how I carry myself, because I think I'm a good person, to just cater to this one person's perspective on what I should be doing or not doing, right? But at the same time, I don't want to create dynamics that are negative when they don't have to be negative.
Right.
Right. So it's just like a balance in my head that I've been like working.
It's similar to the Hormozy quote of, you're never going to hear critiques from people doing more than you, only people doing less than you. Right. And so even if it's not critiques, even if it's like silent disinterest, right?
Yeah.
It's a similar thing. It could also be like, if you go to, do you remember, have you ever seen the video, the movie, I think it was like October Skies or something like that, or Red October. I can't remember.
I feel like I've heard of something similar, but
Bunch of kids build like a rocket in their high school to try to get a college scholarship, right? Whatever. I don't know. Small rural town in West Virginia, right? And like half the students graduate high school, no one goes to college, right? But they all go work in the coal mines after they graduate, no matter what, right? It's like being the kid who got accepted into college, but you still have 3 more months of high school. And so now everyone starts to isolate because they know you're going to leave anyways.
yeah.
But I think that a common misconception, or I think it's a misconception, because like I think that even if we hit the lottery tomorrow, we probably wouldn't like go anywhere. It's certainly not lose touch with people. It's not like like, oh, we hop on the fame bandwagon and now I don't know who you are anymore. Right. Like you could hand me $500 billion tomorrow. I'll buy a private jet and fly to Alaska for a month. I'm still going to pick up phone calls from Joel. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, I feel like a lot of people, especially with the age that we're at, if they start seeing like, oh, look, there's a number on my phone that shows that more money's coming into my bank account. They're like, oh, that guy's like not going to be around forever. Like he's just going to go onward and upward somewhere else. Right.
Yeah.
Which sucks, but I don't think that's egotistical.
I'm glad you brought up the college thing too, because I actually, now come to think of it, there was a similar thing that happened in college, where we were all doing our college applications, junior year or whatever, into senior year, end of junior year, start of senior year, doing our college apps, early applications, whatever.
Yeah.
And this one kid got, the only kid in our class of like 550.
Right.
He got into Stanford.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Like awesome school, smart kid, worked his ass off. He wasn't like the brightest on every subject, but he definitely worked really hard and he tried his best and he got A's and he made it in Stanford. That's awesome.
Right.
That's super cool. And like at that time, I'd made it into Florida Tech and like good school. I was happy to be down in Florida. He was super stoked to be in like Ivy #1 in California, going to Stanford. He was super pumped. I was pumped. And like, I remember the week that he got in, like he didn't say anything about getting in. And I was like, oh, like, how was your weekend?
Right.
Like I was just asking, he was like, oh, like I just got a letter back from one of the colleges I applied to. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, did you get in? He was like, yeah. And I was like, what college? And he was like, Stanford. And I was like, dude, that's so awesome. That's so cool.
Right.
And the really interesting thing was my girlfriend at the time had also applied to Stanford, and she had not gotten in.
Right.
And she had this huge resentment towards this one kid who'd got in.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wasn't really as strong-willed back then, and so I didn't agree with her, but I didn't disagree with her. I was just like, "Yeah, I mean, like, he got in, it's, it is what it is, like, maybe you'll get into blah, blah, blah,"
It's
right?
because he's
Kinda
a straight
direct
white male, Sander. That's what
Actually, he was a gay white male.
it's.
But
Well, they didn't know that on the college application.
right. But, it was like it was really interesting for me because I was like, this kid, Max, who got in,
Right.
I was like, he he worked really hard and he got into an awesome school. Like, why not be happy for him? And it was really interesting because Max and I actually became much better friends that year.
Right.
And I think part of it was like, it wasn't just my girlfriend, but there were several people in his life that I noticed who started treating him differently just because he'd gotten into Stanford.
And it's not like he was bragging about it.
No,
Right.
it wasn't. And it's
Right.
not like he was a different person.
Right.
It's not like he was some like snobby kid now because he got into Stanford.
They're just jealous.
He just worked hard and he got into an awesome school. Like, why not just be happy for him? Then like I was just happy for him, and like we became great friends because like there were several other people in his life who just started treating him a little bit different, and there was kind of this aura around this one kid who got into Stanford, and like I just didn't care.
Right.
Like I was just happy for him. Like I
Right.
cared for him, you know what I mean? But like I didn't care that he was in Stanford and I was going to Florida Tech. And Florida Tech's an awesome school, and Stanford's an awesome school.
It's kind of like inverse egotism, where someone else is doing better than you. They're not putting themselves above you, but you're putting yourself below them.
Yeah,
It's like you're self-judging yourself. They're not even doing any of it. They don't fucking care.
yeah.
Right?
And it was a weird dynamic, and I was just
Yeah.
like, I was just happy to be friends with this kid, and hang out with other friends and whatever, and
Right.
like have a good time. Like it was just cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a quote that I can't remember exactly, but I won't bother pulling it up on my phone. But it's something like, "You should only be looking in your neighbor's bowl to make sure that they have enough to eat, not that they have more than you."
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if you're checking on someone, it should be just to make sure that they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Not that they have more than you, not that they're doing better and that you should hate yourself for it, or they're doing better and that makes them an asshole or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
it should just be making sure that they're doing well. So it's like, if you're doing well, I'm going to feel happy for you. And if you're doing like poorly, then I'm going to try to help you. Right. But if you're doing well and treat me like shit, or if you're doing poorly and then, tell me that I'm an asshole for doing better than you, then I'm not going to want to help you. Right. But yeah, I think it's an interesting dilemma. I think how you carry yourself takes yourself a long way. Like my dad, he's high up at NASA, and he told me as I was growing up, he says that he thanks his janitor every day with the same respect that he thanks his boss.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that when I was in elementary school. And I remember it when I first started working at Northrop Grumman, my first like real office job. And when the janitor came by and emptied the trash can, I thanked them, and I got his name, and we started chatting, and like we became like kind of buds, right?
Yeah.
But it's like it's not awkward unless you make it awkward, you know? And so one of the reasons I think that I like Elon Musk as a person is that he doesn't carry himself like he's better than you, like a Kardashian, right?
Yeah.
Or fucking Kanye, right? Like he doesn't walk into a room and start shitting on other people and like
Right.
expect you to treat him like a better person, right? He is down to earth. I think it's largely why people like Joe Rogan, because he's a regular person. He doesn't see you as more or less than him,
Yeah.
right? And that makes him respectable. Same with Max Verstappen. Dude, fucking George Russell and Max Verstappen got into some shit at the end of last season because George Russell's a cuck. But George Russell was basically saying like, oh, Max Verstappen shouldn't be swearing and calling people names and stuff because he's a bad role model. And this year, there's more rookies this season than like maybe ever, apart from the first year of Formula One. There's 6 rookies who are brand new to the sport.
Oh wow.
But brand new to Formula One. They were F2, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's funny because there's a couple clips of the media day where like all the F1 drivers get together to take photos, and when the photos are over, everyone disperses. All the rookies like swarm to Max and start hanging out with him and joking and laughing and stuff. And so they interviewed all the rookies, and all the rookies were like, "Oh, he's a super nice guy. He's really great, dude. We love Max." And it like does a hard cut to George Russell, who's like, like there's memes like POV George Russell after like, your brand new rookie teammate is friends with Verstappen after you called him a bad role model or shit like that. But it's like, fucking like Max is like probably the most talented driver out there, and he's just as approachable and just as nice because he treats you like his skills and abilities don't matter because you're not a fucking driver and you're not on track racing next to him. If you're on track racing next to him, he'll probably call you a fucking pussy and then pass you on track because he's competing. But apart from that, who fucking cares? It's not a competition. It's a media day, dog. We're taking photos. Like,
Right.
who cares? And so it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like when you're sitting at the bar and like people are asking you how your day is going and you start showing them your drop shipping stuff, there's no reason for them to get upset at you because they're not drop shipping. You're not a direct competitor. Like, you're not
Right.
taking money out of their
We're
pocket.
playing different games.
Yeah, exactly. You're playing different games. So
We're living in the same time frame of life, but we're not playing the same game, and that's cool.
exactly.
You got your game. I got mine.
Exactly. And even if you are playing the same game, there's no reason that you like, even if you're better at a game than someone else, you're better at the game, but that doesn't make you a better person overall.
No.
So even then, it's like, who fucking cares? Like, why put yourself above the other? So to put this into better words, like I did last night when I wrote this sheet, self-promotion is vanity, which indicates to others you value yourself over them. This can very easily bleed into not valuing others at all. Not valuing others can lead to weakened relationships as others don't feel valued, and no one wants to be in a relationship where you feel like the other person doesn't care about you unless you're a simp like I was in a previous relationship. That sometimes leads to a negative feedback loop in which someone will present their positive attributes in hopes of impressing someone. This comes off as egotistical and they find no success, so they repeat the cycle trying to prove themselves even more. And then they get even more disrespect, right? And I feel that this happens a lot in the type of like Wolf of Wall Street, like hustle sales guys in their 20s who we mentioned earlier, who they're trying to prove themselves because like girls aren't going to like them if they don't have a nicer car or a nicer watch or whatever, because they're directly comparing themselves to the competition, right?
Mm.
And that's a problem because they'll flex their stuff and then they don't get respect, and so then they try to flex their stuff harder and then it just gets worse. And it's like a negative feedback loop of becoming more and more egotistical, but it's driven by a wholesome cause, which is just wanting genuine relationships. But there's a misunderstanding there in that a person feels that solid relationships are built on showing the other person how good you are as opposed to showing gratitude to the other person how good they are. Does that make sense? Like, you and I are friends not because I prove to you how good I am at rowing, but because I'm grateful for how much you know about cars and can help me work on my car and teach me how to race, right?
Mm.
It's like that kind of thing. It's like relationships aren't built on showing the other person how good you are at something, but by being grateful for the other person for what they do,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I hear you.
And I think that that's a very core misconception, especially in people who are playing the political game in high school, like they're trying to be the coolest guy or the best salesman or whatever. And now you get caught up in, well, Tyler drives a BMW, but Jerry drives a Mercedes AMG and the boss man drives a McLaren. And now you're just focused on what you have and not who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Losers focus on winners and winners focus on winning.
I have that in my next segment.
Oh, awesome. There you go.
Do you have anything else on segment 2?
No,
All right. Let's get it. Segment 3.
this one's fun.
How to remain humble regardless of success. Given the topics we've covered so far, I think it's fair to state that presenting as egotistical is a net negative. And yet, we all know that presenting yourself as confident can directly correlate to charisma, which is largely seen as a positive trait. What do you think the key distinction is between ego and charisma?
I think it's a lot of how you present yourself and how you carry yourself. Like, ultimately, the facts of the situation could be exactly the same, but how you present it to another person operationally makes a big difference in terms of if you're coming across as egotistical or just coming across as knowledgeable or charismatic or confident.
So give me an example with a Formula One driver.
Yeah. So if you were on track and you were doing laps and your teammate is half a second slower per lap, you guys both pull into the pits. Someone egotistical may be like, "Oh, you man, like you just gotta speed up. Like I don't really know, like you're doing this wrong. Like this corner, it's all screwed up. Like just fix this. It's watch how I do it.
Right.
Like I'm doing it better through here, and like you got to clean this up. You're just gonna be half a second slower unless you fix this. Good luck.
Be more like me. Get closer to what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. And someone who's more confident would be like, hey, I notice on track you're doing this, this, and this really well. I think that you're struggling in this one corner. Maybe try to break just a touch earlier and be able to get on the power a little bit earlier. I think that will help you in the falling straight away and you can pick up some time there.
Yeah.
Right. That's someone who's confident and knowledgeable and not just being like, hey, like I'm better than you. And I think the egotistical part of the first side of the example I use is like, um, it's not just that they're better than you at something, it's that they are better and explaining why they're better is not worth that person's time, right? Like someone egotistical is projecting I'm better than you, and it's not even worth my time to try and explain why I'm better.
It's more combative than collaborative.
Yes, yeah, much more so.
Yeah.
And so I think there are operational things you can do to remain humble. I think one of those things is ensuring that you keep yourself in check in the sense of the person you're talking to is still a person who has gone through the same volume of life that you have gone through.
Right.
Right. Or maybe they've gone through some more, maybe some less or whatever, but they're still going through some portion of life that you've also gone through, and they've made different decisions than you have, and they've accomplished different things than you have. And just because you find that the things you have accomplished are more valuable than the things they have accomplished doesn't make that true.
Right.
Just as you think that doesn't make that true.
Right.
And so I think that reality check is really important. And then also understanding, having key checkpoints for yourself of what do you value about this person's opinion. It can also be valuable because sometimes you can try to come across as charismatic or confident and they might just take it the completely wrong way. Like I was trying to come across as like happy and excited to share my dropshipping stuff, and people maybe saw that as just like egotistical, right?
Yeah. Like you're excited to show you're better than them.
Yeah. So now it's like a check for me of like, do I care either way? Right? Like, is this person super valuable and important in my life? Am I going to cater myself to try and, have a better relationship with them? And then if this person is valuable in my life, how can I present myself in a manner that doesn't come across that way? Right. And I think that ultimately comes down to communication and being humble in how you present it. And being what?
And whether or not you have a podcast that explains everything in the background.
Yeah.
Like to how to someone.
Yeah.
It's like do you remember the lady in our TikTok comments who was like, oh, another two white guys talking about shit they don't know or whatever, right? I forget who I was talking to the other day, but someone was like, oh, maybe it was Wesley. Someone was asking me like, oh, you have a podcast? And I was like, yeah. They were like, what's it about? And I was like, honestly, it's not really about anything in particular. It's kind of just like documenting our growth.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe Ricky asked me, I don't know, at Pauhana, but it was something I remember saying Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos get a lot of hate these days. And all they have to show, no one knew who the fuck they were in the 90s when Elon Musk was working out of his garage and Jeff Bezos sold his fucking car to whatever, right? Like, they didn't see them in the hard times. They didn't see the personal growth they went through or the struggle or the hustle or anything like that. They just know billionaire now.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people don't even know that Elon Musk is the one who sold PayPal and built PayPal.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right.
Or that Jeff Bezos, everyone who was partnering with him on Amazon thought Amazon Prime was ridiculous.
Yeah.
They thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
And now everyone relies on it, right? But no one, like, there's no long form evidence that you can go back today and see what Elon Musk was like in 1995. You can't go back and see the inside of Elon's head or how he conducted himself back then. And a lot of people don't even watch his long form stuff now. So a lot of people are just way too quick to assume. But at the very least, you have like the Rogan podcast that he goes on and you get a pretty good understanding of who he is, right?
Yeah.
But the TLDR, I told this guy, whoever I was talking to, I can't remember. I was like, I just want to have some type of video proof that documents the mistakes that we make, the lessons that we learn, and the type of people we were from the beginning. Because I feel that if we're 55 and massively wealthy and successful, it's going to be really easy to judge us unless you can go back and see the video proof from 2024 when I had $120 in my bank account and rent was due tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we still have respect for other people, right? And so I feel also that when wealthy people today show respect for other people, it falls on deaf ears because people assume that rich people are just like saying shit to, like, they don't trust them. because they're rich and you're poor, and so they must know something that you don't, so you can't trust what they say, right? So even if a rich person is being kind and being respectful to other people, they still won't believe it, right? You can go back to the Vision 79 podcast from 2024 where we were respectful and poor.
Mhm.
So that way when we're wealthy and respectful, it shows that we were that way before we got there.
Yeah, consistency in character.
Right, exactly. And not everyone has a podcast to do that, but that's okay. I think there's other ways to do it. I think that confidence is knowing you're capable of completing a challenge, but ego is having confidence that others cannot complete a challenge as well as you. So to clarify, confidence is centered around your abilities and ego is centered around others' shortcomings. So this is like that Michael Phelps winners focus on winning photo, right?
Mhm.
Because the other guy was focused on how he was competing in comparison with Michael Phelps. And Michael Phelps was just focused on winning. He was just focused on what he was doing. And I feel that ego is largely, whether you're comparing yourself and putting yourself above someone else or comparing yourself and looking at how poorly they're doing, you're always looking at the other guy. And, the only reason you would look on yourself is to make yourself grow larger than that person in comparison. Does that make sense? And so anything that you're trying to do, like, you're not going to admit your shortcomings. You're just going to brag about your positives. I don't see a lot of egotistical people talking about the stuff they do poorly,
Mhm.
And it's because that would make them look worse in comparison.
Yeah.
So a lot of egotistical people won't admit their mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk. I think I think all great people are willing to talk about their failures and their successes.
Right.
And I try to emulate that when I talk about, my business pursuits or my racing stuff or whatever, because I want to try to instill that character because I think it's important. For example, someone like Elon Musk talked about how they accidentally canceled Ebola prevention funding to, God, what country was it?
I don't know.
I forgot, but
Yeah.
it's somewhere in Africa. They accidentally canceled Ebola prevention
Right.
funding, and then they restored it. Like,
Yeah.
he's someone who is open to talking about mistakes
Right.
and also open to taking advice and open to trying to do things better.
Right.
And that's someone that I respect, and I have a great respect for that character. And so I try to emulate that when I talk about my things in my life because I want to grow into someone like that. Like, that's a role model, and I see that as someone, Elon Musk, who's not egotistical, but rather confident in his abilities, but also open and understanding of his failures and where there may be drawbacks or whatever.
Yeah. I think that admitting to your mistakes and recognizing them as lessons learned is a great way to stay humble, regardless of the success you have. Because everyone makes mistakes at every level, right? And your willingness to admit them is what is, makes you egotistical or not, right? So like if you're a high profile celebrity and you're caught cheating on your girlfriend, right? That's a problem. It's egotistical. You don't want to admit to it. You won't admit to it, right? But if you come out about it and you're like, listen, like I fucked up, right? And I'm taking this as a lesson learned, it doesn't make the action righteous. Like it doesn't make it better, but it does show that you're trending toward the right direction and you're maybe not as egotistical as you might seem otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And also, like everyone goes through different life things. So, like Grace and I know a person who is cheating on their significant other. The significant other has found out by this point. But regardless, we're talking about this person and we're like, man, you know, like they're a nice person. In the conversations that we have with them, I enjoy their company, right? And Grace and I were talking about it because she was like, yeah, it's just difficult because when people cheat on their significant other, that really hurts because I've had it happen to me before. And I was like, me too. But I also have to recognize that I've had different life experiences with this person. Maybe this is the first serious relationship this person's ever been in. And they were faced with a scenario that they weren't sure how to handle. And so they fucked up and they did it wrong. And maybe they're like admittedly open about it being wrong and are committed to not doing it again and learning from this experience. In that case, they hurt someone. They didn't have the experience. It's a tough way to learn a lesson that I should hope you don't have to learn that way,
Yeah.
right? But if it happens, it happens. When my grandfather was teaching my dad to land a plane the first time they were flying, my grandpa didn't tell him to put the landing gear down. He was like, just go land. And so my dad tried to land with no landing gear down. And so like quick fucking like it like scraped for a second and then he quick like went up again. And his grandfather was like, why don't you put the fucking landing gear down? And my dad was like, you didn't tell me, I don't know, right? You'd think if you're landing a plane, put the fucking landing gear down, right? But if you've never landed a plane before, How are you going to know?
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a lot going on in that moment. I have a little empathy for that, a little sympathy. I have sympathy for making mistakes. If you admit to the mistake, it's the first time you've made it and you're committed to changing from then on, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think that if you were to make that mistake and then immediately try to blame it on someone else and not take accountability for it and then never mention it again, I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I would agree.
That's when you start to succumb to ego.
And I think that also inhibits yourself for that inhibits your ability to genuinely grow.
Yeah.
And that's like it ties into my initial thinking of the only people I really judge are the people who I know have a capability to do better and choose not to.
Right.
Like
Right.
those are the only people I'm like, hey, like, come on.
Why aren't you doing more?
Yeah. I know you can do better than that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's gotta be such an effort to do that too, like, to try to avoid talking about your mistakes and, like, duck responsibility for it and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Like, I'm watching this podcast, it's called the Dalton Fisher podcast, but he has this lady on who's a journalist, and she interviews, like, cartel members and, like, drug lab producers and shit like that, like, criminals, she interviews criminals, and she's like, "Yeah, when we do these interviews, we bring, like, masks and sunglasses and gloves and shit for them to put on to maintain their identity a secret, right? We still get the stories, but without doxing their identity." And there's this great quote from I don't remember who, but it says, "If you wanna see the true identity of a man, put on a mask, and then he'll tell you exactly who he is," right?
Mm.
And I thought to myself, I'm like, "Man, it must be so difficult to try to manage who you are day to day, like, to lie about it," right?
Yeah.
Because I started to think about it and I was like, "Oh, our podcast is kind of like our mask." Because, like, we speak openly here with no holds barred. Like, I don't think we hold our tongues on anything particularly, right? I mean, you don't say the N-word on here, but, like, outside of here no, I'm kidding. But but, like, we don't and the thing is, like, I don't hold my tongue on here. I don't try to pretend to be someone who I'm not, so this is like a mask.
Yeah.
But I don't act any differently on our podcast than I do day to day. So it's like I just am not faking anything.
Mm.
And it's astonishing to me how many people try to fake it day to day, and I think it's really easy when you're faking that type of shit to slip into egotism because you're focusing on how you are relative to other people and trying to cover up your own mistakes and shortcomings to try to put yourself above other people, and it's a slippery slope. So I think another way to remain humble regardless of your success is to just not lie, like, not put on a mask. Just be yourself, just be authentic. Say what
Yeah.
you think and do what you say, right? I think
I
that's all I
agree.
have. Do you have anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, it's good.
Yeah.
I think that was a relatively encompassing topic and
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was relevant for our current life.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dial-in quote, but I don't actually like it, so I'm not going to use it. I once heard a girl at the bar say, "The difference between confidence and ego is the need to prove yourself to others." I like that one. But my real dial-in quote is one that I made up at the beginning of our podcast and I wrote down while you were talking. Um, and I was on the phone with my mom today and I was telling her about real estate and I was talking about the Tyler thing with the BMW and Mercedes and how Tyler was like, "You'll see. Like when you start to sell, you'll see that people look at you differently when you drive a nice car, and then you're gonna want a nice car." And I was like, "I don't think so." And my mom was like, "I think that you will come around to that." I was like, "I don't think so. I wear shoes with masking tape on them to work." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know the shoes I got for the preliminary injunction in February of 2023?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I wear those to work every day." And she was like, "What the fuck? Why?" And I was like, "Well, they're my only 9 to 5 shoes. So I'm going to wear those shoes to my office every day until I'm out of a 9 to 5." And she was like, "What do you tell people when they ask?" And I was like, "That." And she was like, "You tell that to your coworkers and your boss?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Why? That's like such a slap in the face. Like they're not going to want to invest in you." And I was like, "Actually, I think they respect me more for it because I go in there like with the clear intention of not wanting to be there, but I put forth good work anyways. Like as far as like I'm compared to the other engineers on my team, I pull my fucking weight, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's even more commendable that I pull my weight or more respectable if I am pulling my weight without wanting to be there, right? And so then you have people rooting for you because they know that you have higher aspirations, but you're not taking shortcuts while you're there anyways, right?
Mm.
And my mom couldn't understand it. And she was like, "I think that eventually you're going to want to clean up and like start wearing nicer clothes and have a nicer watch to present yourself to other people." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "Because that's what successful people do." And my quote, which I said to her, is millionaires wear suits, billionaires wear Hawaiian shirts.
True.
Like Mark Pylock from
I was about to say Mark Krylock. Yeah.
Yeah. Billionaires don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Alex Ramosi doesn't fucking care. Why do I care? Right? I'm gonna wear what makes me comfortable and let my success speak for me.
I think there is a small point I want to add too, though, is that I think other people's perception of you caring can be different than your personal perception of you caring. Like
Right.
I actually I want a $100,000 car.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's not because I want people to see me in a $100,000 car.
Right.
There are just certain things about the specific $100,000 car that I want, like a Ferrari 308,
Right.
that I really want to enjoy in my life.
Right.
Right. And so I think that there can be a discrepancy between shooting for people's perception of you being wealthy and actually enjoying things that just cost money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
like I found a watch the other day that I really liked on Instagram. I don't know shit about watches, so I was asking Greg about it, and he was telling me about it. It's like a $50,000 watch, but I like it. It's gold and
yeah,
blue.
that's cool.
I like those
Yeah.
colors. I would own this watch if I had the money, but not because I think that other people would look at me and go, "Oh, that's a nice $50,000 watch." There are dozens of 150, 500,000, $900,000 watches. Mark Zuckerberg wore a almost $1 million watch on Joe Rogan or something like that
Yeah.
when he came on, right? I thought it looked ugly. I don't like it, right? I'm not going to wear something as a status symbol. I'm going to wear something because I like it, or drive something because I like it,
Mhm.
right? I'm not big on hats. I'll never own a very expensive hat. I just don't like them, right? No matter how
That's the
stylish.
ones we get at Rolex.
Yeah, exactly. No matter how much of a status symbol it is, it's like I don't fucking care, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So but the fucking Miata that I want to build, that's probably a $20,000 build, all said and done, right?
Yeah.
But I'm happy to drive that because I like it, not because of how much it says about me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good clarification to make.
Yeah.
But that's all I
I got
have. That's all I have.
Well, thank you for listening. Enjoy your week.